The alien warrior held a picture of me and said I was the one they needed. Eli Mercer's day had started the same way most of his days did, with a clogged air filtration vent and a muttering contest with the coffee machine, which had recently declared itself a sovereign entity. He worked swing shift at Portal Xander, an interstellar docking hub bolted onto the belly of New Terra's third largest moon. The janitorial unit didn't offer prestige or adventure, but it did offer solitude, which Eli liked. No supervisors breathing down his neck, no random space pirates trying to stab him, and no one expecting much from a guy whose most dangerous tool was a mop programmed with passive-aggressive commentary. That changed approximately 8 minutes. After Aero 300 Standard Time, he was swabbing the deck in Docking Bay 9, whistling off-key to a pop remix of Martian Whale Song, when the ceiling cracked open like an overripe melon. Metal screeched, light shattered, and someone crashed through a cloud of fractured glass and support beams, hitting the floor with a weighty thud and a shower of sparks. Eli stood there, mop in one hand, bucket in the other, blinking at the small crater now occupying his freshly polished floor. "If you're here to pick up a shipment," he said cautiously, "you might be a few meters off." The figure groaned and pushed itself up. Armor, sleek, dark. Definitely not human defense force issue. It had the shimmer of Visari make. Interlocking. Plates that adjusted and hissed softly with each movement, like the suit was whispering battle hymns to itself. Then the helmet disengaged with a faint hiss, folding backward into itself. What emerged was a woman's face. Striking, harsh, but not unkind. Her hair was the color of dying embers, falling in angular strands against skin, the shade of desert stone, and her ears, long and tapering to fine points, twitched as though trying to decode the atmosphere. Eli blinked again. Elven cosplay on a Tuesday. She didn't answer, just reached into a compartment on her thigh armor and pulled out a square of worn synth paper, stepped toward him, and held it up. It was a photo of him. Not recent him. No. This was Eli, maybe 10 years younger, standing in front of some kind of ancient ruin he didn't recognize, wearing clothes he didn't own. He had no memory of it. "This is you," she said, her voice low and oddly melodic, as though unused to the shape of English. "We've been searching for you for years." Eli glanced between her and the photo. "Okay. Weird fan club energy. Do I owe someone money?" The woman's eyes narrowed. "You are Eli Mercer." Most days. Behind them something buzzed, then exploded. An entire section of the wall disintegrated, as if someone had aimed a molecular disassembler and pressed obliterate. Flames licked up from the wound. 3 figures stepped through the smoke, wearing matte black armor without insignia. Their weapons glowed blue. "I take it back," Eli muttered. "Monday energy." The woman didn't hesitate. She grabbed his wrist, dragged him behind a stack of cargo. Crates, and tossed him a small device. It stuck to his chest with a pop and activated, a personal shielding unit, rare and expensive. "Hey!" Eli shouted. "You can't just slap strange tech onto people without—" She vaulted the crate with a roar, pulled a weapon from her back, and activated it with a bone-vibrating voom, a beam blade deep red and screaming with energy. She moved with elegance that made no sense in the middle of a cargo bay. She sliced through 2 attackers like they were made of wrapping paper. The third aimed at Eli and fired. The shot hit the shield and ricocheted, narrowly missing a sign that read, "Emergency coolant, do not puncture." Naturally, the ricochet hit it anyway. Alarms shrieked as coolant sprayed in every direction, freezing the floor in jagged patterns. Eli tried to run, slipped, spun, and landed hard. The warrior woman skidded next to him, panting. "We must go, now." "Sure," Eli groaned. "I was just thinking how boring my life was." Chapter 2. The chase begins. They stumbled through emergency corridors and maintenance tunnels, dodging patrols, steam vents, and one confused robot who insisted they try a sample of his artisan space cheese. By the time they reached her skimmer, Eli's shirt was torn, his left boot was gone, and his right eyebrow felt like it had been electrocuted. The skimmer was ugly, but fast. She powered it up, and they launched into the void with a jolt that slammed him against the seat. "I'm officially kidnapped," Eli muttered. "Do I get a phone call? I saved your life." "I'm not saying I'm ungrateful, but can we at least start with names next time? Or maybe explain why I'm apparently wanted by a bunch of faceless future ninjas?" She didn't answer for a moment, just adjusted the nav controls and set a course into deep orbit. Then she turned to him, eyes lit faintly by the control's glow. "My name is Selvisari, warrior. You carry something ancient in your blood, something dangerous. We were told it was myth." Eli raised a brow. "What? Like space herpes?" Her expression didn't change. "You are the key to a war that began before. Your people walked on their moon." He rubbed his face. "Fantastic. I just scrubbed vending machine sludge off a floor an hour ago. That doesn't scream galactic messiah to me." Sel leaned back in her seat, fingers tight on the yoke. "I do not care what you were. I care what you might be. You have knowledge inside you that could save worlds or destroy them." Eli stared at the viewport as stars blurred past. He tried to process it, then failed. "So," he said finally, "we're sure this isn't just a really elaborate dream brought on by gas leak exposure." I stabbed a drone through the eye. "Do your dreams bleed?" "Not unless I eat chili before bed." Sel looked at him sideways, brow furrowing as though trying to determine if he was a threat, a joke, or a very irritating puzzle. "You're not what I expected." "Story of my life," Eli said, and slumped deeper into the seat. "Let me know when the part with answers starts. Or snacks. I'd settle for snacks. Food can wait." "Easy for you to say," he sighed, said the genetically enhanced space elf who doesn't have to metabolize 3-day-old vending burritos. Silence stretched between them for a while, save for the hum of the engines and the distant throb of emergency alarms echoing from the spaceport's comm channels. Then quietly, Sel pulled the photo from her armor again, looked at it like it held a key to everything she'd lost. Eli peeked over. "So, just out of curiosity, in this photo I don't remember. Do I at least look good?" She didn't answer, but he could have sworn one corner of her mouth twitched. Chapter 3. Revelations in the Void. The skimmer rattled like it had been built from spare parts, spite, and mild optimism. Eli sat wedged in the passenger seat, gripping a crash bar labeled "Absolutely Not for Emergency Use," which he found deeply concerning. The view outside was a streak of stars smeared by velocity, and the hull panels creaked every time the ship banked left, which was often. Apparently, Sel didn't believe in gentle turns, navigation beacons, or brakes. "I think we hit light speed with a limp," Eli muttered. "Are we being chased, or are you just fundamentally opposed to comfort?" Sel didn't respond. She was focused. On the nav screen, lips tight, long fingers moving with efficient precision over Visari control surfaces that shifted form depending on her touch. Everything about her said military, posture, silence, restraint, except for her ears, which twitched occasionally like they were catching subspace gossip. So Eli continued, because if he didn't keep talking, he was fairly sure the tension in his spine would fossilize. "What exactly are we running from? You know, besides my crippling sense of inadequacy?" She flicked a glance at him, and if Eli wasn't mistaken, there was a trace of pity buried under the steel. "The people who tried to kill you back there, they weren't bounty hunters, they were cleaners," Eli winced. "That doesn't sound promising." "They erased traces, evidence, loose ends." She paused. "You qualify as all three." Charming. He adjusted in the seat, trying to find a position that didn't feel like his kidneys were being taught a lesson. "So, what's the plan? Hide in a dust belt? Disguise me as a six-eyed slug merchant? I do a decent impression of being in over my head." "You need answers," she said simply, angling the skimmer toward a cluster of jagged asteroids floating in lazy orbits. Eli squinted at the readout. Please tell me those aren't explosive. They're cold remnants of a mining operation, long abandoned, perfect for low-profile landings. Oh, good, Eli said. Nothing says safety like haunting a space graveyard. The skimmer slid between two asteroid fragments and touched down on a flat outcrop, with only a few metallic groans of protest. As they stepped out, the surface beneath them crunched with frozen dust. In the air, what little there was, sealed, in a containment field, smelled faintly of ozone and battery acid. "Stay close," Sel said, her voice echoing in the tight comm channel between their helmets. "Sure," Eli replied, "because this looks like the kind of place where someone loses a kidney." They moved quickly through a narrow service tunnel carved into the asteroid. Lights flickered along the edges, some dim, some clearly faking it. The place had once been alive with machinery. Now it whispered to itself like a forgotten machine, trying to remember what it used to do. After a series of slow descents and one very questionable elevator, they entered a chamber bathed in cold blue light. It was filled with relics, Visari artifacts, some no bigger than a thumbnail, others the size of escape pods. Sel moved with familiarity, brushing her hand along a curved console that lit up under her touch. "This was one of our first intelligence hubs," she said. "Long before the war reached its crescendo, before the betrayal." Eli's brow furrowed. "You keep saying war like I'm supposed to know which one. You do realize humanity has had like 14 wars, just over coffee beans." "This was not your war," Sel said softly. "Not yet." He looked around the room. Everything shimmered with the weight of memory, like history had decided to hover instead of settle. Sel retrieved a small device from a sealed case, a cube with shifting internal geometry that made Eli's eyes itch just looking at it. "This," she said, "is a memory core. It stores more than data. It holds lived experience, thoughts, emotions, entire neural snapshots." "Cool," Eli said, stepping closer. "Also terrifying. What if it plays back the memories of someone who hated pants?" She ignored him and placed the cube on a pedestal. It unfolded like a flower blooming in reverse. A pulse of light rolled over them both, and Eli staggered backward. He saw flashes, war fields of light and sound, ships shaped like serpents breaking. Apart in atmosphere, voices in a language that tasted like electricity. Then a face, his own but not his own, older, wearing armor, standing beside Sel. Only she looked younger, barely more than a girl. Eli collapsed to one knee. Sel caught him. Her grip was iron. "The core is responding to you," he rubbed his temples. That was like watching all 3 trilogies of galactic reckoning in fast forward while being punched in the brain. "You have the neural signature," she said. "It confirms it." Eli sat on the floor, staring at nothing. "Confirms what?" "That I'm some reincarnated alien warlord, that I used to play space chess with death." Sel crouched beside him. "Not reincarnated, remembered. You carry the genetic imprint of Commander Elon the Reinstantiator." "Sounds like a knockoff blender." He was one of the Visari's most brilliant tacticians. He encoded his memories into the genomes of a chosen few, hoping one would survive outside the Empire's reach. Your ancestors were part of a hybridization effort, hidden on Earth, forgotten. Eli looked at her. "So I'm a library?" "A living repository," she said, "with instincts and knowledge not fully your own." Eli groaned and let his head thud against the wall. Why couldn't I have inherited something useful, like the ability to make lasagna from photons? A flicker of amusement ghosted across Sel's face. "The knowledge inside you might be the key to ending what remains of the war." "Oh, great," Eli muttered. "All I ever wanted was a quiet life and maybe a pet moss dragon. Now I'm the key to a galactic reboot." The cube snapped shut. Silence returned. Dust floated in microgravity swirls. "We need to go," Sel said. Others will have detected the activation. Eli followed her out, legs still wobbly, head spinning. "Just so I'm clear," he said, voice echoing. "If I sneeze wrong, I won't accidentally launch a fleet or anything, right?" "No," she said, then paused. "Probably not. That's comforting." Back on the skimmer, as they powered up and left the asteroid behind, Eli stared out the viewport. He didn't recognize the stars anymore. Maybe he never had. "Do you ever get used to being hunted?" he asked. Cell, adjusting flight vectors, didn't look up. "No, but it gets easier when you know why." Eli crossed his arms, slumped deeper into the seat. "I hope this why comes with dental coverage." Outside, space curved and stretched. The chase had only just begun. Chapter 4. Into the Stormsel skimmer groaned as it sliced through the upper layers of a gas giant's atmosphere, turbulence rocking the cabin hard enough to rattle Eli's teeth. The cabin lights flickered, either a sign of internal strain or a ship finally developing a sense of humor. Cell didn't seem fazed. She angled the controls like she was dancing with gravity, not dodging it. "Remind me again why we're flying into the stomach of a planet," Eli asked, gripping the edges of his seat as the interior temperature dropped 5 degrees. "Because I'm all for adventure, but I'd prefer mine without atmospheric pressure that can crush my lungs into raisins." "We're not going into the core," Cell said, "just near it." "Oh, just near it. That's so much better. Should I pack a lunch for my impending compression death?" Cell reached forward and tapped a panel. A portion of the clouds ahead shimmered, revealing a floating installation that hadn't been visible a second earlier. Massive rings rotated lazily around a central axis, tethered by gravitic anchors that hummed faintly even through the hull. Blue shielding pulsed over the surface of the station like the heartbeat of something that refused to die. Eli whistled. "That looks friendly." "It's a data vault," Cell said. "One of the last of its kind, protected by phase cloaking. This is where we'll learn why the cleaners are moving again." As the skimmer aligned with the docking port, an automated voice crackled over the comm in heavily accented Visari. Cell replied in kind, her voice fluid and cold. The airlock hissed open, releasing a gust of recycled air that smelled vaguely of ozone and old ambition. Inside, the station was dark, except for the rhythmic blink of blue lighting that pulsed down narrow corridors. Every wall had consoles, half of which looked like they hadn't been touched in centuries, and the others seemed to be quietly judging them. "I love a creepy data vault," Eli said. "Do we also get a haunted AI or a static burst cut through?" The silence, followed by a synthesized voice that sounded like it had been through one too many black holes. "Identity unconfirmed. Neural resonance. Partial match." Eli squinted. "That's not very reassuring." Cell ignored the voice and led him to a circular chamber lined with reclining seats and neural ports. She activated one of the chairs, and a halo of pale light floated above it like a cybernetic crown. She motioned toward it. "I feel like this is the part where you say it's perfectly safe, and then I wake up with someone else's memories and an overwhelming desire to build doomsday devices. It will extract dormant data from your inherited code," Cell said. "It won't harm you, not unless you resist." "That's also what dentists say before the drill." He sat reluctantly, and the halo lowered over his head. A low hum began, followed by a rush of color behind his eyes, flashes of images, sounds, and alien words that made his throat tighten involuntarily. His fingers twitched. He was somewhere else. The battlefield stretched to the horizon, illuminated by burning skies and crumbling towers. Ships hovered above, blotting out stars, and there, standing beside him, was Cell, or a version of her. Younger, eyes harder. They weren't comrades, not yet. They were strangers with matching goals and different scars. Together, they moved across ruined cities, hunted something neither of them could name. Then came the betrayal. Someone familiar, a face Eli couldn't quite see, always at the edge of memory. The betrayal wasn't loud or violent. It was clean, surgical, the way only someone who knew you intimately could hurt you. The knowledge was pulled from Elon's mind, stored in quantum locks, and scattered like ashes across space. And now, centuries later, someone was collecting. Oh, those ashes! The vision shattered. Eli gasped, yanking the neural crown off his head. His skin was slick with sweat. The station lights flickered, responding to the data surge, like the old systems had just realized who he was. "You okay?" Cell asked. There was something careful in her voice, like she was preparing to catch him if he fell again. Eli coughed. "Define." "Okay, if you mean I just took a galactic brain tour through my own not-self and found out I used to be some war-torn general with betrayal trauma, then sure. Peachy." Zell turned to the console. The data stream from the neural link continued to spill across the screen. Symbols Eli couldn't read but somehow recognized. Patterns, warnings. "The cleaners are following the trail," she said. "Piece by piece. They're not just trying to erase you. They want what's inside you." Eli leaned forward, hands on his knees. "I've got news for them. I don't even want what's inside me." She studied him for a moment. "You're not him, but he left enough of himself that you might become what's needed." That's a terrible motivational speech. "Do you also do birthdays?" Before she could respond, the lights above them dimmed to red. A low tone echoed through the E. A vault, and a voice colder than the first broke through. "Unauthorized access detected. Cleaners inbound. Phase cloak compromised." "Oh, great," Eli muttered. "The death squad has GPS now." Cell moved fast, shutting down the data stream and retrieving the memory shard. "We can't stay." "Big fan of not staying," Eli agreed, hopping to his feet and stumbling only slightly. As they sprinted back through the corridors, the station began to groan, metal stretching and compressing under atmospheric pressure shifts. The outer rings rotated faster, defense protocols booted up with a wheeze, launching drone pods like sleepy hornets. Eli tripped over a fallen conduit and swore. "Are you always this graceful in high-stakes scenarios?" Cell asked without slowing. "Only when my life's on the line," he panted. "Otherwise I'm very majestic." They reached the skimmer just as an enemy vessel breached the atmosphere. A lean obsidian ship bristling with antenna and quiet malice. Its cannons began to charge. "Please tell me this ship has an emergency getaway button," Eli shouted. Cell didn't answer. She just slammed her hand onto a red panel. The skimmer detached with a violent jolt, its sublight engines flaring as it plunged them back into the planet's atmosphere faster than the cleaners could track. Behind them, the data vault exploded in a blaze of pale fire. Inside the cockpit, as alarms faded and the ship steadied, Eli finally exhaled. "So that was fun." Cell leaned back, staring at the fragments of the vault scattering through the clouds. "We got what we came for." "Good," he said, "because I don't think we're getting the deposit back." They didn't speak for a while. The stars returned, soft and silent. Eli looked down at his hands. They didn't feel different, but something in his mind had shifted, like a door had opened and now there was wind blowing in from somewhere very old. He glanced at Cell. "You think there's more of him in there?" She didn't look at him, but her voice was sure. "Yes, and more of you, too." That better come with some kind of intergalactic coffee punch card. The ship jumped to light speed, and the hunt continued. Chapter 5. The Final Key. Time passes as Eli and Cell track down the remaining memory fragments, dodging cleaners and uncovering more of Elon's buried knowledge. Through trials and revelations, Eli slowly accepts his role as both himself and the inheritor of ancient memories. The story reaches its climax as they locate the final piece, the catalyst, on a hidden world. The thermal converters were humming louder than usual, which either meant the engine was warming up properly or preparing to explode in a spectacular show of defiance. Eli gave it a cautious look, then patted the side of the console like someone trying to appease a particularly unstable pet. "That's right, girl. Nice and steady. No need to go full supernova today." Cell stood a few meters away, adjusting the settings on her scanner while a translucent map of the Anthari cradle floated between them. The system was thick with magnetic interference and ribboned with plasma storms. Cell's expression hadn't changed in hours, which worried Eli. Normally, she alternated between mildly concerned and intensely focused with a hint of doom. Now she looked like someone about to tell him there was no more coffee left in the galaxy. "So," Eli said, poking at the map, "where exactly are we going? Because this entire region looks like someone sneezed digital spaghetti across space." Cell expanded the map. "There's a relay node embedded in the outer asteroid belt. Visari design. We need it to complete the triangulation on the final memory shard." "I see. So we're going to park the galaxy's worst-named ship in the middle of a high-density magnetic field, rummage through ancient alien tech, and try not to get fried." "Fantastic. The node is shielded. You'll be fine." "You say that, but your definition of fine and mine seem to differ. For example, I think fine doesn't usually involve being chased, shot at, or electrocuted." Cell didn't argue. Instead, she tapped a control and brought up the data feed from the relay. The signal was erratic, like a ghost trying to hum a song. "Underwater, we'll need to stabilize the conduit manually." "Of course we do." Several scenes of navigating dangerous space, solving ancient puzzles, and avoiding enemy forces later. Chapter 6. The Choice. The light from the catalyst wasn't blinding in the usual way. No dramatic explosion, no choir of celestial voices, no slow-motion debris spiraling through the air. It was softer, stranger, like being submerged in warm water filled with old dreams. Eli felt time folding around him, not crushing, but curiously inspecting, as if the universe were squinting and saying, "Really? This guy?" He hovered in a mind space, somewhere between memory and machine. It smelled like ozone and citrus peel, which was weirdly comforting. Images flashed past, Elon holding the catalyst, smiling without smiling, a world being born inside a shell of dying stars, Cell standing in front of a war council, her voice calm, firm, unflinching. A child laughing on a world Eli had never seen, his own face younger, less confused, more hopeful. Then he heard Mavix screaming, not in pain, but in disbelief. "You can't just rewrite the code," Eli's voice echoed without his mouth moving. "I can if I'm part of it. That's the thing about being the genetic echo, right? We're not just photocopies, we're continuation, memory with bad posture." The catalyst shimmered around him. It was no longer just a weapon. It was a recorder, a builder, a nervous system for possibility, and he was teaching it something new: choice. When the light faded, the chamber had changed. The twisting arms of the old machinery were still there, transformed into something softer, more fluid, like stone grown from music. Mavix was gone, vanished or scattered, or possibly ejected violently into the past, which Eli decided he'd deal with philosophically later. Cell was kneeling beside him. She looked tired, a little scorched, and very annoyed. "You were in there for 3 minutes," she said, "and the entire substructure evolved a new architecture." "Yeah," he said, blinking. "Pretty standard Tuesday now, huh?" She helped him up. The pedestal that had held the catalyst was empty. In its place was a small, silver cube, humming faintly and projecting a calm, rhythmic pulse into the chamber. Eli picked it up. "Is it safe?" "No idea," he said, then turned it over in his hands. "But it's definitely friendlier." They walked out together down the shifting hallways, now alive with pale green light. The planet outside had stopped blinking. The sky had settled into a deep blue that looked suspiciously like nostalgia. Epilogue. New beginnings. Back on the melancholy shrimp, Eli slumped into the pilot's chair and sighed dramatically. Well, mission accomplished. I saved the universe using nothing but inherited DNA and reckless optimism. You also fell into a crater, Cell reminded him. That was strategic. You got stuck in a gravity bubble and shouted for help for 6 minutes. Echolocation. Training. Very advanced. She rolled her eyes and took the co-pilot's seat. So what now? Eli thought about that, the kind of thought that wasn't rushed. For the first time in days, maybe weeks, he didn't feel like a man running just ahead of a question he couldn't answer. We return the cube to someone smarter than us, he said. Maybe those scholars on Varela Prime, or your scary aunt with the antennae. Matron Selkie, she said, raising an eyebrow. She eats people like you for breakfast. Then maybe after. That we swing by Earth. I know this little ramen shop that does a discount if you bring in alien tech. Plus, I owe my landlord an explanation for why my apartment exploded. It didn't explode. It emotionally exploded. She didn't argue. He looked over at her, and something in his expression softened. You know, I was kind of an idiot when we met. She considered that. You were loud, unprepared, lacked tactical awareness. So yes, but you adapted, she added. That matters more than your origin. I also developed a healthy fear of ancient devices that hum menacingly, which makes me more Visari than most Visari. Outside the viewport, stars stretched in elegant arcs. The shrimp's new navigation core, gifted by the catalyst apparently, generated seamless slip-space jumps now. It even offered weather updates in a pleasant voice that sounded vaguely British. As they jumped out of orbit, a last flicker of the ancient system shimmered in the rear sensors, collapsing gently into a harmless drift of stardust. Whatever the catalyst had once been, it had chosen differently this time. Eli stood up and wandered to the rear of the cockpit, where Cell's toolkit lay open. He picked up a multi-tool and examined it with exaggerated seriousness. You know, if I'm going to be a cosmic keystone of universal balance, I should at least learn how to fix a plasma coupler. You're not touching the couplers, Cell said immediately. I could be a useful relic, like a toaster with insight. You're not a toaster. Fine. Air fryer.